Well, since I'm in the office today on Saturday making calls to some of my homeowners that are in pre-foreclosure, that are facing a foreclosure case on their property, just doing some follow-up, I wanted to give you some insight on doing cold calling to your homeowners that are facing foreclosure. Okay, so here's a couple things, just some guidelines for you to follow when you start making calls. The first thing is obviously creating your lead lists. Get a list and start with, maybe 50 or 100, depending upon, how much time that you have. If you're working full time, you can create a little bit smaller list of maybe 50 people that you can do your follow-up on. If you're not working full time and you're doing real estate full time, then I would suggest at least start with 100. So having that list, a manageable list that has their names, their full names, the property address, obviously the property that is facing foreclosure, and you should be able to create the list so that you have the mailing address of the person. Maybe they don't live in the property no longer. Maybe it's just a rental property. So make sure you have that information, and then make sure that you have, within that information, you have skip traced their names and property address to get their phone numbers, to get their cell phone numbers. We're not getting landline numbers any longer because no one has a landline. So these are cell phone numbers. So make sure that you first get your list together and get that organized. Then you want to make sure that for each lead that you have that are facing foreclosure, put a few notes in as to where their foreclosure case is at. Is it at the very beginning? Are the courts still trying to serve them with a summons? Is it in the middle of the case? Have they been maybe working on a loan modification that hasn't gotten approved and you're just going to be checking on them? Or are they at the end of their foreclosure case where they have a non-jury trial coming up, or if they have a motion for summary final judgment and or have a sale date that has been set on the house indicating that they're at the end of their foreclosure case. So make sure you have that information in there, because the conversation that you have with them is going to be, that information is going to be important. One of the best things that you can do to initiate the conversation that day is go to the clerk of courts, put in their case number, look to see what is the very last thing that has happened. Maybe there was a motion filed this week by the plaintiff for an extension of time, or maybe the defendant, maybe the homeowner that you're calling, their attorney filed a motion for extension of time. Or maybe, unfortunately, the plaintiff has filed a motion for summary final judgment, or the courts have entered a final judgment. So you want to see what is the latest and greatest thing that has happened on their foreclosure case. You're going to use that in your conversation. So when you call them, that's really going to be your point and your reason for calling. If there's nothing new, that's fine. Let them know that you're just calling today to let them know that you've been monitoring their court dockets and there is nothing new in their foreclosure case, but you wanted them to know that you were still, watching to see if there was anything important. And maybe you already had a conversation with them. Maybe they're already working on a loan modification. So then you can continue the conversation by asking them, are you still working on your loan modification? Now, when we say cold calling, it depends. If you have never spoken to that person before, that is a true cold call. I'm really talking more about your follow-up calls, which is still sort of cold calling, but if you've had a conversation with them before, let's call that more of a warm call. But a few things that you want to after you've organized your list and gotten your information ready to call, is a few things. When I call, I don't say Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so. I call them by their first name. Keep it friendly. If you have spoken with them before, that's one of the first things that you want to do, because these people are getting calls from a lot of people. If you spoke to them a month ago, they're probably not going to remember you. So always say, hi, this is Ryan, and we spoke about a month ago about your foreclosure case. That will usually give you more time to tell them this is the reason why I'm calling. That actually is probably the phone of someone calling back right now, one of my homeowners that I was calling from the office here, but I'll let the message pick it up and I'll get back to them. But so that's the first thing is you want to make a reference to any conversations you had in the past, and if you haven't had a conversation with them, it's a true cold call. Use your first name, use their first name, tell them who you are. My company is Florida Homeowner Solutions. And I was just reaching out to you today to talk to you about the foreclosure case that you have on 1234 Main Street, and see if you needed some help. Are you working on a loan modification? Are you trying to keep your home? Now, we provide services, to help homeowners keep their home. But if you don't provide services like that and you're just simply calling people to see if they're motivated sellers, then again, you would open the conversation to say who you are. Say, my family and I, we reach out to people that are facing foreclosure and just wanted to see, are you still working on a loan modification to try to keep the home, or are you wanting to sell the home? If they tell you, no, I don't want to sell, I'm just I want to keep the home, we're working on a loan modification. Well, obviously, less than 20% of loan modifications are ever approved. So that gives you an opening to say, okay, great, I'm glad, I wish you guys luck, I hope that it works out for you. Just know that the national average is less than 20% of loan modifications get approved, but I hope they're going to approve your loan modification. I'll continue to monitor your court dockets. You want to offer them something, give them a reason for you to follow up later and say, I'll follow up with you if anything else important comes up on your court dockets, or at least, next month or in a few weeks, I'll just follow up with you to see how your loan modification is going. And if you have, in your education and experience, maybe a few tips on loan modifications and how to get them approved, then maybe that's something you could follow up with them on. Say, hey, I just wanted to send you a text. We talked, last Saturday or last week or yesterday, and here I just wanted to give you a couple tips that I always tell my homeowners. This will, increase your chances of getting a loan modification approved. The point is that you want to keep it friendly. You want to use first names. You want to always make sure that within that first 10 seconds of the introduction that you're asking them a question. Keep them engaged in the conversation. If you've spoke to them before, immediately reference who you are and then ask that question, like, are you still working on your loan modification? Or how's everything going with the attorney that you hired? Maybe they told you made some notes that they hired an attorney. So that's another thing too, is that when you're doing your cold calling or your warm calling, make sure that you're keeping notes of what happened in the conversation. I spoke to a homeowner today, and she actually told me about that she's been a little bit busy because she's helping her niece. They bought a horse and she went horseback riding with her. So of course, the next conversation that I have, I'm going to ask about the horse, how the horseback riding is going with the niece. That will also jog her memory to know and keep it familiar that, she's spoken with Ryan before, so she in her mind hopefully isn't just going to hang up the phone. She'll entertain more of a phone call. So always make sure that you are, first and foremost, keeping it friendly. Use first names. Ask a question as soon as you do your introduction, ask a question to keep them engaged, and then always give yourself a reason to follow up later. Give them a reason. For them, you don't say to them, hey, give me a call me back anytime, because homeowners aren't going to call you. You always have to do the follow-up. Always leave the follow-up ball in your court. Okay, so those are some tips that I just wanted to give you guys on this Saturday while I'm making some cold and warm calls to my homeowners facing pre-foreclosure. So get on those phones and start calling those leads.